Welcome back to Be the Change podcast with me, Stephanie Howlett, CEO of Diversity NL. Have a listen as we explore real life, vulnerable topics on diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. Become awakened, create culture of inclusion, be brave, have impact by being an ally. Explore how you can be the change that you always wanted to be. We respectfully acknowledge the territory in which we gather as the ancestral homelands of the Beothuk, and the island of Uktamaguk as the ancestral homelands of the Mi'kmaq and Beothuk. We'd like to recognize the Inuit of Nunatsiavut and Nunatukavut, and the Innu of Nitassinan and their ancestors as the original people of Labrador. We open our hearts and minds as we strive for respectful relationships with all First Peoples of this province. We search for collective healing and true reconciliation as we honor this beautiful land together and commit ourselves to being stewards who will respect the cultures, traditions, and ceremonies of all who call it home. Welcome back to Be the Change podcast. We have a very special guest. I'm going to call her my bestie, and she's definitely the health and wellness guru. Her name is Gill Whelan. A lot of you probably know her. So she is the founder of Whelan Wellness Inc, a global wellness coach, a creator of Whelan Wellness Virtual Bootcamp. Through her podcast, For the Well of It, Gill inspires all of us every single day. By the way, you're certainly one of those people that I follow in a kind way, getting to know what you're doing, where you're to, all the different talks that you're doing for the fantastic different organizations that you're involved with. And I know you draw on a lot of your personal journey, overcoming restrictive dieting, looking at the 4-pillar system, transforming a lot of lives in wellness. And I see a lot of those posts of people thanking you and getting into, the journey. They wouldn't have gotten through whatever it is in their lives without being a part of Whelan Wellness and your BCE, your best community ever. I see that everywhere, by the way. I love it. So you have a Bachelor of Commerce degree from Memorial University. You're definitely a seasoned leader in the fitness, health, holistic wellness areas. Definitely recognized by a lot of major outlets, and a trailblazer when it comes to leadership and motivational speaking. You've been nominated for a lot of different awards, and you're very passionate about what you do, which I love. And looking at rebuilding relationships with food, with fitness, looking at your mission and how you help others, I think, get to love themselves more. And it's how we present ourselves inside and outside. So welcome to the show, and thanks for being here.
Thank you so much, bestie. I'm so happy to be here finally. Got to have you on my podcast last year, and then it's taken us a bit of time to loop back around, but I'm glad to be here.
Absolutely. Thanks for joining us. So let's get into a little bit about you, Gill Whelan. Where does that driving force come from? Because to be a business boss, I'm going to call it, like, let's own it. It takes a lot of grit. It takes a lot of stamina, a lot of fortitude. It takes a lot of gumption. So where did your humble beginning start to? What does that look like for you?
It's been such a long journey, and it's really funny because just as a quick aside here before we dig in, when Whelan Wellness really started to grow in 2020, I got a lot of media attention, as you just said. And one of the interviewers said to me early on, "What would you contribute to your overnight success?" And my husband chimed in and said, 25 years of hard work. There's no such thing as overnight success. But my story is rooted really big in vulnerability. It's really, I had been in and out of business myself in the fitness space since 2009, but a lot of people never heard of me until the last few years. And the difference is I started living my life and running my business completely in line with my personal core values. And that's when the game changed. It's when I allowed myself to let those walls down and let people in and let people see that a leader in the fitness industry. And now I do not identify as a fitness coach. I identify as a wellness coach, and a leader in that space is somebody who is brave enough to share their journey and brave enough to share how this system is broken in many ways. I was 9 years old. I remember at Christmas when a family member gave me a night dress as a Christmas gift that was too tight. And that was the first time I remember hating my body. 9 years old. And then I remember it was right around that time, and that family member was not an omnipresence in my life. It was somebody who kind of came in and out of my life, which probably made that a little bit more impactful and a little bit more hurtful at that point in time. And then it was shortly after that, I remember going to my grandmother's house and standing on the scale in her bathroom and being upset. I don't remember what the scale said, but I do know that at 9 years old, I had zero context of what it should have said. Like I don't know why the number upset me because I had no number in mind that it should be, or no education around that, or feeling around that. I just thought immediately, you're not good enough, since 9 years old. So I've had quite the journey myself. And I don't know, I often say when I speak to different groups, I don't know if it's because of, or in spite of, or due to working in the fitness industry so heavily, that I definitely had struggles around disordered eating and exercise patterns and behaviors. And it wasn't until I took time away, I actually retired from the fitness industry in 2017. And when I took that time to focus only on me, because I knew that something needed to change. And when I realized that the problem wasn't within the gym I was running, the problem wasn't within the business partner I had, it wasn't within the staff at the gym, it wasn't within the clients, it was things inside of me that really needed attention and healing, because I was not willing to go another 4 decades of my life just being obsessed with size and numbers and all that stuff. So it's taken a really long time. From the time I started working in the fitness industry in 2009, it was the craziest perfect storm of love, hate, and passion, because I love what we can learn from that physical push. I bought my first gym membership at 18 years old, and I bought it out of babysitting money during the hardest, most difficult space to navigate to that point in my life. I was only 18. My parents were going through a divorce, and it was a nasty, long, drawn out, horrible season for our family. And I bought that gym membership out of babysitting money. And immediately I identified that through pushing my body in a physical way, I was gaining emotional and mental space and clarity. And for me, that was everything. And so when I realized that moving my body would shift my mind, I knew that fitness would forever be a part of me. But when I started working in the fitness industry in 2009, I quickly discovered that, like, one moment I'm full of passion and completely lit up and so into it, and I love it for all those reasons that I just described. And then the next moment I'm so frustrated and feel so malaligned because it's such a predatory space, and it can be such a predatory space. And really, that's not going away. Right now, latest reports that I read about a month ago, the fitness industry in North America is now a $3 trillion industry, the fitness and diet industry. And it is, and now at this point and stage in my career and in my life, I'm loud about this, and I'm going to continue to be loud about this, but it is an industry that is wholly dependent on you feeling like you're just not good enough, like you need fixing. And it will never go away for that reason, because it's vulnerable and it hurts, and they are doing a great job at preying on those insecurities of other people. So when I decided to shift things in 2020, the world changed. And when I saw people hurting in so many different ways, even people that have never struggled with mental health before began to struggle with mental health. There were so many unknowns. There were so many scary things going on. And when I started to see that, and I started to hear from past clients and current clients, because I dipped my toe back in a little bit of gym coaching, and friends and, colleagues and people I went to school with, and they were reaching out saying, you really should do something. We need your presence somehow. You should figure out how to do something. And I thought, this is my opportunity to change the world. The world is never going back to what it was. So now it's time to get in here and get loud about my message and be brave. It took a lot of courage. It was really vulnerable and extremely emotional at first for me to speak about my story, but it's my story. And because I put such intention in developing the 4-pillar system, which is right here in this office in a notebook, because it was designed for me. I knew I had the toolbox, I had the skill set, I had the education, and I had the experience to heal these things that I needed healing. And I created this 4-pillar system to do that. It was not to be shared with anybody ever. And now, now she's gone, now it's worldwide. I have members across 9 countries now. But the reason is it takes things back to basics and a safe, holistic approach. And this is what the world needs. And I'm just getting started. I'm not going to stop.
Yes, queen. I love it. Right? No, but you're being a whole lot of vulnerabilities. And as a person, I've struggled with weight my entire life. The battle with food, emotional eating, what it means to me. And now after going through cancer, it's very difficult with joints and things, movement, but I know how much it means when I do it. I feel good, but it's getting the gumption. How do I get the gumption, right? As a
Mm-hmm.
person, because a lot of people are struggling with pain management, all those sorts of things for
Mm-hmm.
medication or just health reasons. So how do you get the gumption to, like, I have a treadmill directly in front of me, but I don't like,
Yeah.
but I truly do in my office space. But how do I get the gumption up to get to it? You know what I mean? So
Mm-hmm.
it's, and it is the emotional shift, the mindset that a lot of us need to get to, but building that to get to where we need to be, so that we
Yeah.
know, because we know that the scale, like, I don't like what the scale says either, like, because I know that, when we look at your BMI, what that should be when it comes
BMI
to
is
eating.
garbage.
Well, yeah, okay, fair. So, but when it comes to eating and those sorts of things, I know that I am an overeater. I'm a snacker nighttime. Daytime, I'm perfect. But soon as I sit down, that's in front of a television or something like that, I think snack, whatever that is, the cravings hit like a ton of bricks. And I'm sure a lot of people are like that. Any thoughts on how do we
Oh, I have
shift mindset?
so many thoughts
Please,
because that's
please.
exactly what it is the mindset thing. And first of all, I need to challenge your beliefs here because,
Okay.
and this is how I work with my people. The first thing you said was, I've struggled with my weight. You haven't really struggled with your weight. You've struggled with your feelings around your weight. And a lot of that
Yes.
is part of an external construct that has nothing to do with you. It has nothing to do with your health or your size or your shape like that. It's such a, like, the number on the scale is basically a measurement of our relationship with gravity. That's all it is. But we are like, what is the word I'm looking for? We are trained and molded to believe that it needs to be some unrealistic ideal. And what is that ideal? Like, what is the ideal weight for me? I have now learned through all of this journey that I've had that the ideal weight for me is not 135 pounds. It's a weight where I sleep well, I move well, I'm strong, I don't have any pain, I have a healthy appetite, I can play with my kids, I'm patient. Like, that's my ideal weight. It's not. So when you think about that, and then another thing you said, and you're my bestie, I'm not here to pick you
No,
apart, but
no, do it, please
it's an
do.
example of the paradigm shift that
Yeah.
everybody, if I could get in everybody's head in the way that I want to, I think we could change the world. Because another thing you said was, I'm a snacker at night. Do you know why you think that that's not a good thing? Because in 1993, Oprah Winfrey told the world you shouldn't eat after 7 p.m. That's true. It was everywhere in pop culture in the 90s because Oprah said that. And it's not based on anything. There is no science that tells us that we should not eat after a certain number on the clock. Think about shift workers. How are they going to stay alive if they're not eating after a certain time? And often I find when I eat to a point of discomfort in the evening, because that's something separate. That's
Yep.
often because I didn't consume enough throughout the day. We're animals. We got to eat.
Fair.
We got to eat. So if I make sure that I have enough at supper time in particular, and I make sure that it's, I really hesitate to use some of the language because it's been so destroyed in diet culture, but balance, like, a bit of everything is what I'm kind of
Right.
saying. A bit of
Yeah.
everything that's going to fill you up. Get some fiber, get some
Yeah.
carbs, get some fat, get some protein.
Yeah.
But that's not always perfect. In fact, whoops, I just threw my mic on the floor. Can you still hear me?
We're good.
Okay.
Yeah.
I often go on my Instagram stories and at supper time and share what I'm making for supper. Sometimes it's a bowl of oatmeal. Sometimes it's the perfect, beautiful meal. Sometimes it's a bowl of pasta. It can be, sometimes it's a charcuterie board. Sometimes it's a perfect chicken breast, sweet potato, and asparagus. It's, perfect in quotes because there is no perfection. So
No.
I think a lot of it is our feelings wrapped around it. And then the feelings that we have around our habits. So our weight and the time of day that we eat and watching TV. And because we live in a hustle culture, so we shouldn't be able to sit down and relax and watch TV either. All of these things create barriers to reaching an elevated level of health and wellness. So if we could just it's such a process. It's definitely not as easy as what I'm about to say, but if we could take our beliefs around this stuff and just throw it in the trash and start from scratch, that's where the magic happens. And that's what we do. That's kind of what our programming is. The nutrition pillar, because I have the 4-pillar system, one of the pillars is nutrition. And often that shows up in a way for us where You unlearn behaviors. Like we're working backwards. We're trying to challenge beliefs. Like whose belief is this anyway? Is it mine or is it Oprah Winfrey of 1993?
Yeah.
And then we build those food relationships. I know I spent many years in my gym years, you know, when I was running and lifting heavy and working long hours and working 2 jobs, I was afraid of bananas because somewhere along the way, somebody told me that bananas were starchy. They were high in the glycemic index. The hell does that mean? I mean, we know what that means, blood sugar impact, whatever, but it's not going to hurt us. In fact, hilarious story that I brought up bananas today because I'm a little under the weather. And so I spent yesterday evening in bed really early because I had a class this morning. And this morning before class started, I had my regular coffee, but I ate a banana. And I don't usually eat before class because sometimes it upsets my tummy, but I ate a banana and every one of my members said this morning, it was such a great class. They were like, okay, we got to ban the bananas. Because the energy was just, it was there. We are animals, we are machines. We got to fuel the machines. So I think instead of thinking about the way we've thought about our bodies, health, fitness, all those things previous, we need to reprogram. And this is what I do. The majority of my speaking engagements are rooted in my self-care talk, which people immediately say self-care. People think, okay, bubble bath with a glass of wine or a face mask or whatever. And those things can be self-care practices, but our 4-pillar system is designed in a way that they are habits that you can enter into your day to day without spending a lot of money, without making a massive change, without restricting anything, and without feeling frustrated. So they are additions to what you're already doing that don't need to be big change. They need to be tiny change. Like your podcast is called Be the Change. Tiny changes make big results. And by results, I mean feeling great, because that's all we really want, right?
Definitely.
I mean, in gyms or out of gyms, I've worked with probably tens of thousands of people now, and they always say, okay, my goal is lose 10 pounds. My goal is to gain some muscle. My goal is a 200-pound squat. My goal is, but really what they're saying underneath all of that is, I want to feel great. I want to be empowered. I want to feel, I want to show up big in my life. And these habits that we've created around the 4 pillars, that's the magic. That is the magic, because it challenges previous beliefs, it builds new systems, and then it's, you know, the logo in the compass wheel is there like that for a reason, because it's literally the way we kind of guide our behaviors. And once it becomes, like Mariel Hemingway said, a ritual is a way of choosing oneself. It's a way of saying, I choose me. And that's what we got to start doing, right? Because as soon as kids get busy, life gets hard, work gets stressful, relationships get strained, we toss our own health and wellness out the window. It's the first thing to go. If we leaned on these habits instead, you would see all of that elevated. It literally, science has proven to us, there's been a big body of psychology, especially since the pandemic, in researching self-care and its impact on avoiding burnout and just feeling our best. And what it's proving to us is that when you get adequate, and I mean science-based self-care practices into your day and into your routine, the results are showing, you will show up better in all aspects of your life. You'll be a better employer, employee, coach, student, teacher, whatever roles you get to play every day. And that's, who doesn't want that? You know, the original beliefs we have around the fitness industry and the diet industry is about punishing. It's about taking away. It's about restricting. It's about short-term, unrealistic goals to keep us on that hamster wheel. It's about things that are not health and wellness promoting whatsoever. So if we did a paradigm shift and completely change the game and start adding in little things that made us feel great, then what I've experienced with a lot of people then comes a little bit of enjoyment guilt, because you get to enjoy your life and feel better and get healthier, but you will. Because this is a model that's sustainable. This is a model that keeps you going. This is a model that keeps you wanting more because you watch that elevation in your life. And it truly is magic. Our health is our wealth. We know that, right? Any of us that have struggled or had illnesses or anything, we know that if you got your health, you got everything. And if we can do things that are health promoting every day, this is the front end of healthcare. And this is the way we make our lives better.
100%. So I want to talk a little bit to the folks listening that might be identify as females. So menopause,
Mhm.
right? Like, so menopause seems to, I guess, from the research I've done and from the experiences I've had recently, that it seems to almost stagnate our metabolism. It feels like, how do
Yeah.
we get past that? And I'm sure you have a lot of conversations about this and a lot of maybe feels that you can put out there. Like, how do we
Mhm.
kind of kickstart our metabolism to kind of feel better? Because a lot of us are going through hot flashes, night sweats,
Yeah.
insomnias, like all that good stuff that happens as the gender that we are. Like, how do we kind of help some of that? Any thoughts around that?
I think that first of all, I think that there needs to be such a bigger, brighter light shone on menopause. Like we're not talking about it. We are a little more now, but it was always like the quiet thing that you can't talk
Mm,
about. But think about when an individual first enters puberty, whether male, female, or whatever. But let's
mm,
talk about, as you said, assigned female right now. So the female body into puberty goes through massive, massive change. That's a big hormonal shift. It's a pivotal time in life. The same thing happens in
mm.
menopause. It's a massive, massive change. So we get to do it twice. Hooray. We get to do
Yay!
it twice. And
Love it.
it's the weirdest stuff. Like you get to wake up one morning with a giant pimple that you haven't seen since you were 12, or you get to find a couple of fun little black hairs on your chin when you're looking in the rearview mirror. Like it's the wildest stuff that play with your confidence and play with your energy and play with your sleep and your moods and all that. First of all, we got to give ourselves grace. It's a real thing. It's a big change and it's a hard thing. We can do hard things, but menopause is a hard thing. And the best way to approach it is to it's all rooted in self-care again. Like we need to keep movement. We want to keep our joints and our bones and our muscles strong. The foundation of one of my other pillars is movement. And I say movement for a reason. Like I don't say exercise or workout or whatever, because movement will look different for many different individuals for many different reasons, but moving our body is what we need to do. That being said, the fundamental basis of the classes that I teach with my members are rooted in strength training, because strength training has so many benefits. It keeps our bone density. It can help balance hormones. It keeps energy up. It can keep that metabolic rate at a good place. So that's one of it. And then another one is getting such a diversified range of nutrients. Like woman cannot live on mini pizzas alone. Like we need the full plate. We need a bunch of things. We need the fibrous stuff. We need the green stuff. We need the protein stuff. We need all the good stuff. And I don't believe in meal plans. I won't touch any of that. When people assign points and numbers and all that foolishness to food, it fires me up. But we need to get the good stuff in to preserve what we have. My goal as I age is to maintain the muscle mass on my body. I really want to maintain it. Gain some if I can, but definitely maintain the muscle mass I've had. I'm 44 now. I've been lifting weights since I'm 20, and I don't plan to stop. Like I will be the woman in the gym with the gray hair and the tattoos lifting the weights, or in our studio, hopefully. So there's things we can do to take control. It's a hard time, and like your moods will be challenged and your energy will be challenged, but it's not out of our hands. That's the thing. We can't give away our power here in this situation. We can do things that will promote and help us ease through this season of life a little easier.
Amazing. Love that. Movement. Any thoughts on, like, what does movement look like? I know it looks different for everyone. So is
Mhm.
there, like, people say, okay, look, so, but how much movement? Does that mean I should be walking for at least 20 minutes a day, 10 minutes? Is there like a time frame on movement, what the body should look like?
No, and I think each individual will kind of learn what looks good for that. But what we saw in what I experienced, this was like the greatest science experiment of all time when the pandemic first hit, because people were struggling so big because that natural movement was eliminated from their day. Like that movement where you walk from the house to the car up the
Mm-hmm.
stairs to the office, from the office out to lunch, go for a walk around the block. Like all of that was gone all of a sudden because we were housebound. And that's when people really started to struggle. They really started to feel achy and low energy and like their bodies were changing or shifting. And it's because we lack the movement and we need the movement. So I always say, I call it intentional movement, because now again that we've returned to some sort of normal, we all have movement in our day, some more than others, depending on your job. Like some
Mm-hmm.
nurses are on their feet 12 hours a day. I sit here for half the day and then I'm standing for the rest of the day. So it depends on the individual, but I always say make intentional movement a priority in your day. And starting point, I don't know, 20 minutes is good. 5 minutes is good. If you find you're sitting at your desk and you're falling asleep, run up and down the stairs in your house 3 times and see what impact it has. Like it's just such a lot of people say, this is a good time for me to bring this up. A lot of people will say, I wish I had your energy. People who don't know me or are not in my community, they'll say, I wish I had your energy. I create this energy. This doesn't land in your lap, right? Like you're not going to wake up and say, okay, let's go do the thing until you create the habit system. And once you do, you realize that correlation and you'll know what you need. So we do 3 classes together a week. So that's kind of my foundation. And then on the other days, I like to do a spin class or get out for a walk or a run or just something to shake the cobwebs out throughout the day. And I find that my day starts differently if I don't do it. Like I come down here and disappear into my basement for an hour before the world wakes up and before my family wakes up. But what the end result of that is that when the day begins and I go back up and join my family, they're getting a better version of me and I'm getting a better version of me, which is most important, especially in this season of midlife, right? It's a really important thing. So it tends to be a catch-22 cat and mouse kind of situation sometimes, but any movement is movement. When I retired from fitness, I told myself, and this as a self-proclaimed gym rat for so many years, I told myself, oh my God, I had just closed my gym. That's a whole other piece of my story. I just closed my gym and I thought I never have to go to the gym again. Like what an interesting concept. And then I told myself, well, I'm not going to rush out. I knew, of course, some healing had to happen. I'm not going to rush out and buy a gym membership somewhere else. So I'm just going to feel this out and see how it goes. So the first week or 10 days or 2 weeks, I was not moving, like hardly moving at all. I had my 2-year-old home with me at the time and not moving. And what I saw happen for the first time in my life, I started to develop some back pain and a little bit of neck tightness and stuff that I had never experienced before because of my previous habits. And then I realized, hey, movement for me is something that is important to me because it makes me feel good. I just got to make sure I'm doing it in the right ways and for the right reasons. If we're doing it as punishment for our bodies or for what we ate or penance for something that we consumed, then it's never going to feel good. But if you're doing it because you want to be able to keep up with your grandchildren or your kids, or, you got a big work project and you need some clarity, you're out in the woods, I would not be able to tell you how many problems have been solved in the woods behind my house. It's magic.
It's true.
Yeah.
Nature is grounding.
Yeah.
And getting outside of our houses too, like to do that nature walk, to be in a park, like, because we have lots of different green spaces available, throughout, whether we're in Newfoundland, Labrador, throughout Canada, other parts of the world. So getting out to look at and getting to experience, because I find more clarity as well when I'm out for a walk, when I'm doing something with our dogs, with my wife, like when we're out, like out of the house and there's no music on, there's nothing, like we're truly just being present in the moment.
And you'll find that I love family hikes too, and hikes with my husband, because you'll find that you can more easily get into those conversations that may feel hard or that you want to avoid, and you can really sort problems in that way. And spending time in nature has actually been classified as spiritual self-care, because you can tap into yourself a little bit more. Now I'm like, I have a real habit of when I'm walking, running, hiking, wearing my headphones and listening to a book. That's how I read, or a podcast. But I intentionally ensure that a couple of my walks or hikes during the week are just me, so that I can just talk to me, because I'm coaching a lot of people every week, but I'm a peer here too. So I also got to take care of me in the process. And that's an important piece.
100%. So we already talked about 2 pillars. Let's get into a 3rd pillar that you have.
So movement and nutrition, right? We talked about.
Yeah.
So hydration is the next one. We are, as North Americans, generally, I won't paint with a wide brush, but generally underhydrated. We're not taking enough in, especially in the cooler months, in the cooler temperatures. So I just encourage people, there's no set number, because you can overhydrate, and that would be a problem too. But I just encourage people, like find your favorite or treat yourself to a nice water bottle that you really like. I'm really picky about my vessel. Like I drink water out of a certain thing. I drink coffee out of a certain thing. I have another certain thing for tea. Like I'm very picky about it. I like my Diet Pepsi in a mason jar. Like it's just the way I I am. So you know you. Nobody knows you better than you know you. So get yourself something that you're gonna. This comes with me everywhere I go throughout the day. Like this is coming to school drop off. This is coming to all my meetings. This is coming wherever. And by this, of course, people can't see us, but my water bottle. And just make sure that you're intentionally. Once again, it's intention behind it, right? You're getting that hydration in. And then the fourth pillar, and it's a big piece. I'll always say that there's no one pillar greater than the other. It takes all four to really make a change, but mindset. Because we know, I can tell you firsthand, that you can't exercise yourself to a happier life. I've tried. I spent years doing that. You can't starve yourself to a happier life. I've done that too. Like it's just not a thing. So you really need to work on that mindset, because until we can lift all of the weights, we can do all the hikes, we can do all the things, but until you get things right in here, you're not going to experience heightened wellness. And it's such a big piece. And a lot of that comes in practicing and learning. And it's hard sometimes. Full self-acceptance, self-compassion, self-awareness, all those important tools.
Yeah, I find we don't give ourselves enough of, like, we need to find that we're in that stereotype of what a person should look like, what they should dress like, all those sorts of things that there's, because, we put ourselves out there too, looking at movie stars, at people comparing ourselves, using the scale. When I talked about snacking, like my snacking is looking at how do we create healthier snacks, that sort of snacking, because
things that feel good.
So like I am the dark chocolate, salted chocolate, and the Mrs. Vinegar chips, the big Jesus bag from Costco. Like, that's unhealthy. So, but how do we make it healthier? I need to make it healthier. I see that, because otherwise, because I want to fit into my clothes. I want it to feel good.
Absolutely.
So
that's a great
point. Right? So maintaining.
That's a great point, because if we're eating all the time purely based on enjoyment, then chances are you're not going to feel great, right? You're not going to feel super comfortable all the time. So our nutrition approach, I always say eat to feel good. So when we eat, consider things like, how's it going to sit in your belly? Is that something that's good for you? Like for me, a lot of cheese, not a good thing. It doesn't feel good. What about the energy consequences? Like, what do you want out of this? Is it gonna, if you eat Miss Vicky's salt and vinegar chips every day, is it gonna tear the mouth off you and you can't enjoy your coffee? That's a thing
true
too.
Story.
And I have things like that I love too. I like the blue Miss Vicky's, whatever they're called, chili or something. But what Sweet I'll chili. Do when I get really snacky, especially if it's at night and I know it's the end of the day and I'm winding down and this food is bringing me all kinds of emotional satisfaction, because fun fact, one of the biggest holes in the diet industry is that they don't consider that food is emotional, and it is, and it should be. It will be. We celebrate with food, we mourn with food, we gift food, food is artistic. So all of that, but maybe we don't need a large bag of chips every day or every 2 days or every week. So instead, I love a little plate of something. So I can have the chips, but there's going to be some celery on there. There's going to be some carrots on there. And I work my way around the plate until I'm satisfied. And that may sound like, oh, okay, cool. Well, whatever, roll your eyes. But that came with a lot of practice around mindful eating and intuitive eating, because now I'm learning what feels good. I'm able to play the tape forward and know how I'll feel at the end of what I'm eating. And I want to be able to get up the next day and give my workout all I got. I want to be able to put on my nice clothes and feel great, like all of those things to feel great. And I want to enjoy the food. And there is space for all of it. There absolutely is. And the problem is we think that there's not, because we've been conditioned that way.
Definitely. And it does get back to mindset, like what our mindset looks like. How do we get to that mindset where it should be, to what it looks like for all of us? Because we're all individuals, and what's going to work for me is not going to work for you, is not going to work for someone else. So individuality, like crafting that out for us, what that looks like. Yeah.
And I mean, again, food being emotional in a positive way is one thing, but if we're using food or alcohol or drugs to numb feelings, then that's when we might be getting into a little bit of a tangly situation that we should dig into a little deeper, because that was something a lot of people also experienced during the pandemic. So many things felt out of our control, but we can get some satisfaction in indulging in this food right now, or this alcohol or whatever else. So this is kind of the situation that we find ourselves in, and it taps into that need for self-awareness. Like, why am I drinking wine, or why am I eating the fast food? It's because, you know what, it's been a busy week and I need to not spend time cooking and I'm going to enjoy this meal. Then perfect, wonderful, awesome, that's fine. But if I'm eating the fast food because I just got an email from my boss that really upset me, or if I'm in an argument with my spouse, or my kids are going through something really stressful, then maybe we try to switch that up and we spend some time cooking a meal together instead, or we make a different choice. It's not, there's no food that's bad. I really, especially bestie, in this economy, how can we call any food bad? Food, like if we can afford food right now, we're doing pretty good, all of us, right? So we need to make sure that we don't label food that's any food good or bad. If you're eating, you're giving yourself energy, but if we have the privilege and the opportunity, we want to eat in a way that really feels good for us as individuals, as you said, because it's going to be different for everybody.
Absolutely. So what I hear you saying is leaning into the why behind some of these things,
Yeah.
why we're doing it. Like, why are we having that extra glass of wine or beer, or like, why is that our go-to? Because sometimes that's a coping mechanism for us that we don't always see. So we go to the coping mechanism, because to help us numb whatever feeling or whatever it is that we're going through in life circumstance.
And that's very common, right? That's very normal because we're looking for that dopamine hit. But there's many ways to achieve that too. So when we can find a bit of it bothers me to use this word sometimes, but when we can find a bit of a balance or a mix of all of the sources, then that's where you're going to live your fuller life.
Definitely. Now let's get into your podcast. Tell us a little bit about your podcast, what that's about, and I guess some of your favorite folks that you've talked about on that podcast. It's curious.
Goodness, every conversation. She's been on a little bit of a hiatus because life just got really busy. I have professional partners in Whelan Wellness, but for the behind the scenes administrative stuff, it's almost a one woman show. So we put a little pin in that, but it will be coming back. And what I wanted to, my goal with the podcast was to share stories of resilience, stories of growth, different passions, anything that can be inspiring. And sources of inspiration come in so many ways. For example, I am inspiring many more people with the way I approach my coaching practice right now versus when I was doing fitness photo shoot and had a 6-pack of abs and that's what I was posting, like there's different values driven behind what I do. And when I meet people that are aligned in that or share passions in that way, I get excited to have them on. I loved having you on. I loved the conversation that we had around the importance of being educated and opening your mind to learning things about diversity, equity, and inclusion. And that's such an important topic right now. I think we all want to, and I said that to you when I had you on, I think we all want to know how to do that better, but sometimes we're nervous to ask. And I loved how you kind of reassured me in that conversation that ask. Never be afraid to ask. Yeah. And don't be afraid to make mistakes.
It's a piece of it. It's messy. Like the work that we all do is a bit of messiness. And I think people are looking for perfections when it comes to this, but like, we're going to make mistakes, be able to apologize, own up and say like, hey, I'm going to do better next time, and just carry on in conversation with people. So that's, it's I think a big piece of the work that we both do is looking at how we can do better for the communities that we're involved in, and how we, welcome diversities and inclusions and belongings and those things into our space, being able to share that.
And being open and honest about what we know and what we don't know. And like I always try to say, if I ever say anything that doesn't sit good with somebody, please educate me. Like, please, share with me. Another guest I had on was one of my members for a long time, Elaine Huckster. Elaine tragically lost her daughter in a car accident when she was very young, and Elaine was driving the car. So she talks about, it was wintry roads, it was a lot of different things, but Elaine talked about navigating grief and that guilt that she felt initially when her daughter passed away, and how she honors Heather's life right now still in so many different ways. There's just a literacy scholarship in Heather's name in the province, and there's a bunch of different things they're doing. And I cried in that episode and Elaine didn't. And she said, it's because it's fresh for you, because it was such a tragic story, but such a beautiful story of strength and resilience too. And I spoke with another one of my members, Sarah Clancy, who is a family doctor, and she shared a little bit about struggles and frustrations but also her calling and how she knew that she wanted to be a doctor, and she applied to med school 3 times before she got in and made that dream a reality. There's been so many great guests that I've had on, and I'm so grateful to connect with all of them. One of them was a woman that I follow she's in Sarnia, Ontario. And when her children were very small, her husband died in the middle of the night without any expectation of that. And he was in bed beside her and he passed away. And through lots of investigations, they determined he was a police officer, and they determined that it was steroid and ephedrine use. And she had no idea. So there was a big shock to that. So then there was a long grieving process around that. And then I had another person talk about the death of a parent and the grief that comes with that. So there's been a lot of wonderful, beautiful guests, and there's been the stories when we get into them. When somebody's brave enough to share their story, it provides healing for that person. And I know I shouldn't say brave enough, because I'm sure there's time and place for that in the journey of whatever they're navigating, but it provides healing for them, and then provides so much support and encouragement and clarity and inspiration for the listener. And there's one of the episodes that I did early on was called "We Can Do Hard Things." And it was really fresh after my son's illness in 2020. And it was the first time, I remember when I recorded it, it was just me in my basement. It was the first time that I was able to articulate what we went through. And it took the fact that I recorded that entire episode with just a couple of voice cracks and because there's a little bit of post-traumatic feelings we all have around that, what we went through. And when I shared that on the podcast, it was the first time I did it. And I sat, when I turned off the recording and I was done, I just sat there and I unloaded. Like, I cried without expectation. I didn't see it coming. I didn't feel like I was holding it back, but I just cried. And I thought, oh my God, it feels so good to just send it out to the universe, just share our story. And of course I had the permission of my son and my husband to do that, but we are all going to, or we all have been through something really hard, because life is hard, and there's no qualifying your hard. There's no competition of hard. There's none of that. If it feels hard, it's hard. And in my experience, I used to have really poor coping skills, and I intentionally work on this all the time. And my initial reaction in the past when I'd go through something tough is to just close off, just get very quiet and retract. And when Hunter got diagnosed with his spinal tumor, that was my initial reaction. I thought, we're not telling anybody this, because I had it was right in the growth phase of Whelan Wellness, a lot of family and friends, and I just wanted to protect our family. Like, I went into mama bear mode, and then I told myself, you know what? There is so much support we can take. And when I did put it out there publicly, again, like, it was a family decision, I got the hardest day of my life was the day Hunter was in surgery. It was an 8-hour surgery. And I'm not kidding. I got thousands of messages that day. And it was so many. I read every single one of them. And some of them were like very similar stories. Their kids had tumors and how they got to the other side of that. And then I had a child with cancer reach out and say, if Hunter ever wants to talk. So there was just so much support when you offer your struggles out to the universe. And that was a big lesson for me. And that's a little bit about what the podcast has shown for other people as well.
I'm here feeling all the feels, because I'm that one that, after going through cancer, I get it, right?
Yeah.
Like, and which is not something I talk about a whole lot. I have a couple times.
Yeah.
So, like, putting that out there and the first time I talked about my cancer was with the boot camp, St. John's boot camp last year.
I know, I was there.
Right. So that was the first time. And my fellow panelists had no idea. So afterwards they're like, WTF, like, you didn't tell us this? Like, well, it's one of those times that I haven't really released it, because I didn't know what it would happen to my business, and I didn't know what it would do for our family. And like, releasing all of these things when you're just starting a business is tough. So that's why, like, for like a 6 or 8 month period, I was kind of off everything, off socials, off things, because hey, when you're doing business as a bald person and you're going through chemotherapies, it's a whole lot of devastation for everyone. right? So looking at what that looks like for your family, and I get the whole protecting piece, but you're right. The more I talk about it, um, I feel the feels because you're the one going through it, but there's something healing about that too, right? Being able to put that out there. So
Yeah. And being able to see your feelings and recognize that this is always
yeah,
going to be a tricky space. Like we go for, and
yeah.
to any of the listeners that don't know our full story, our son's tumor turned out to be non-cancerous. So we got the best case scenario. But when we go now for annual MRIs, it's triggering every single time. The week
Hmm.
leading up is stressful. The smell of the hospital is stressful. All of
Yeah.
those things. And that's not going to go anywhere. But you know what was such a full circle? I'll never forget this. I will never forget this. But one of the things we were waiting for post surgery for Hunter, of course, was two things we were waiting for: to see if the surgery was successful in taking the complete tumor. And the second thing was it cancerous? And so he was out of hospital and we were back home and we had to let things in his spine settle before we could do a scan to determine these things and then wait for pathology. And so when we went back the day that we went back to get these results, it felt like the first time we had taken a breath in a month. And we were one of the lucky ones. And this is part of the reason, as an aside, that I do the work I do with the Janeway Foundation, because I said from that moment, I recognize that a lot of families get a lot worse news when they go to the Janeway than what we got. And if I can do anything, I'm here to do it. But when we left the hospital that day, I made a little post on Facebook because I had begun to share it. And again, the support I got was so amazing. But when I shared that, okay, here's these are the results. We couldn't be happier. We're going home to heal as a family. And one of my members, who's been a member since I had my gym, and also our mothers worked together years ago, so we have a long-standing relationship. She sent me a message and said, I was waiting to send this to you. I was waiting until we got this news that it was all positive and to give you this. And it was, she wrote a circle with a Sharpie around an excerpt from Glennon Doyle's book, Untamed. And it said, maybe this community of women that you've been building all along was actually a net that you needed to fall into.
So true.
And that's what it became. And
Yeah.
initially I didn't want to tell. Whelan Wellness was like on wheels. Things were going so great. And then I felt like I got the wind kicked out of me when Hunter got sick. And I thought, I can't tell these people this. I've got to show up as their coach. I've got to motivate them. I can't bring them down. But the opposite happened when I shared with them. And they became such a sense of support for me. And then they drew from the strength that we somehow found too. And so it's a beautiful thing when you let people in when things get tough.
100%. The vulnerability piece, because we don't know what's going on in people's lives. And
No.
a lot of people have similar stories, just haven't been able to tell them or haven't had the space to tell them. So I think being able to be vulnerable to say, like, hey, we've gone through this. This is something tough. You can get through it. And being able to, I guess, be that coach, be that advisor, and show your vulnerabilities. I think this is the space where we need to get to it. I think as leaders, just to be able to do that, just making it real for people.
I think so too. And that's a big thing big part of my message is that, let's take a real life approach once and for all to our wellness. Like it's not, don't expect perfection, because perfection's a myth. It's not going to happen that way, right? That's what fitness and diet has told us forever, that it has to be perfect. And that simply is not sustainable. It's not going to work. So if I act like, Whelan Wellness has been ongoing now almost 4 years, like my life has been perfect for 4 years, then that's not me being authentic, because it's not. There's been bumps, like there's been struggles, there's been things, and not just because it's me, because we're all human and we all go through stuff. So it's important that we show the real. As leaders, we've got to be real, and that's what it is.
Thank you so much for being real and leading us on your journey and taking us with you on your journey. I truly appreciate that as a bestie, as a follower, as community, as business partners, and going into the work that we do. So can you leave us with a couple of final thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, the way that I would like to change humanity is in a way that every person wholly and unconditionally accepts and loves themselves. And that is the hardest thing, because I can go up to any individual on the street today and ask them to name their top 5 loves of their lives, and not many of them would list themselves. And I'm on a mission to change that. So the way we do that is by taking care, really looking inside. A part of your day every day should be on care for you in whatever way you need it. And that's going to be fluid and never changing. So take care of yourself first. There's a reason why they say for you to take the oxygen mask first when you're on the airplane. And that's the way we need to start living our lives, right?
Awesome. I love that. How can people get in touch with you or follow you and do all those great things?
Oh, thank you for asking. I'm pretty easy to find. I am all over social media, as you know. Whelan Wellness is the company name, Whelan. So whelanwellness.ca, or on Facebook and Instagram and LinkedIn, and then sometimes really pitifully on TikTok.
Fantastic. Thank you for being the change. And we look forward to seeing what's to come in the next weeks, days, years to come. So thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you so much for having me. And I just want to also add a personal note. Thank you for the work that you do, because it's important. And I hope that you never stop.
Thank you so much. Thanks so much for being with us today. Comment below, subscribe, connect with me at Stephanie@diversitynl.com or on LinkedIn. Be the change.